Hello, learners. How are you doing? Welcome to Online Shala. Here you get to read and understand your English lessons. We shall be covering English, Hindi, and science subjects for CBSE. So let's get started with your first lesson in your English book, The Best Christmas Present in the World. Okay, so I would like to give you a brief of what this lesson is all about. It is a war story against the backdrop of Christmas. And Christmas is a festival of family reunion, exchange of presents. People come back home if they are away. And it's one of the biggest festivals in any part of the world. So let's get started with reading the lessons. While I'm going through the lessons for you, I shall be going through every paragraph and then explaining to you. And then we'll go through the chapter meaning, the paragraph meaning, and the word meaning in detail as I go through. Okay, let's get to the reading of the first paragraph. So I would like to first introduce you to the main characters of this chapter. Like as I told you, this is a war story. So the words Fritz and Tommy will be coming across during the lessons, during this lesson. Normally, Fritz is referred to as a German soldier, and Tommy is referred to as an English soldier. And this is you will also meet Connie. She is a lady of 101 years who is waiting for a gift from someone in the family, a loved person. Also, this story has a backdrop of a war that was World War One in 1914. So I would like to begin the lesson now. Please listen carefully. I spotted, the narrator is telling the story, okay? So I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport, a roll top desk. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. I had wanted one, but they were far too expensive. This one was in a bad condition. The roll top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scotch marks all down one side. It was going for very little money. I thought I could restore it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. So now let's look at the important words. Now, I spotted it in a junk shop. So, junk shop is a place where old, used, worn items are sold. It's a roll top desk. Now, roll top desk is one which was, it is a writing desk. This type of model was used in the 19th century, early 19th century. It is a desk with drawers on the either side of it. Okay, so it was made of oak, and the narrator wanted a good desk, but they were all very expensive. So this one was a bit in bad condition. It shows that the leg was clumsily mended. Scotch marks means it appears to have been in a place where things were burnt. So the scotch marks, as in the burnt marks, were there on one side of it, and it was going for very little money. So the narrator thought it's a good piece to buy. So then he thought that when I buy it, I can take it to my garage and work on it. I'll repair it and stuff like that. And he actually took it because it was coming for very little money, and he began the work on the Christmas Eve. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. The veneer had almost lifted almost everywhere. It looked like water damage to me. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. The last drawer was stuck fast. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space. Okay, so what he did was he tried to pull out the drawers. The veneer that is the top layer of the a thin sheet kind of thing is there on the top as a top layer on the desk. So it had almost come up. That is because whenever there's water leakage on wooden top layer, it gets swollen and it becomes loose and it comes out. So that's what happened. So the fire and water had taken a toll. So they caused a lot of damage on this upper layer of the desk. Okay, and then he tried to open the drawers. The last drawer was stuck fast. You see, it was stuck. And so he had to use all his brute force, that is very harsh force. With the side of his fist, he hit it and then it flew open to reveal a shallow space. So there was a lot of space inside and he tried to open it. Okay. So to reveal a shallow space underneath a secret drawer, and when he opened it he saw a secret drawer inside it. There was something in there. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Cello taped on top of it was a piece of lined note paper. So on the top of the box there was a paper which was stuck with a cello tape and written on shaky handwriting. Jim's last letter, received January 25th, 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes. I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiosity got better of my scruples. It usually does. So what happened? This guy opened the drawer and then inside he found a secret drawer where a piece of lined notepaper was stuck and it appeared to be a letter and it was in an envelope. So he felt curious to open it. Inside the box there was an envelope. The address read, Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beeches, Bridport, Dorset. This is the name of the place, Bridport in Dorset. This is in England. So I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top. The date was December 26, 1914. Okay, so let's read the letter. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning. That is Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet, all about as beautiful a morning as I've ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning could be. So this was a Christmas time, and uh, one of the soldiers, the English soldier, is writing to his wife. Her name is Connie. So he is writing during Christmas time when he was in the midst of a war. He writes that I write to you in a happier frame of mind. So it's Christmas time. So he's very happy. Although he's in a war, he says he's so happy that he wants to share something at once. They were all stranded. That is the soldier who's writing to his wife. He and his colleagues, other army men, were standing in the trenches. Now, trenches are kind of pits that are dug where the soldiers can hide themselves and hold their guns, hold their arms to attack while shooting or attacking the enemy. So it was Christmas morning. It was quite as beautiful as he has ever seen, and very cold and frosty, as a Christmas morning should be. Now, I should like to be able to tell you that we began it. That is, he says that we had almost began our war. We were about to fire. But the truth I'm ashamed to say is that the Fritz began it. Now he is saying that I'm ashamed to say that the Fritz began. Fritz he is referring to as a German soldier. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. So on the opposite side of the army, the enemy army was waving a white flag to the English army. They were calling out to us from across no man's land. Happy Christmas, Tommy. Happy Christmas. So what this guy says, they were calling out from across no man's land. Now, no man's land is a part of a stretch of location that is in the middle of both the countries. So that is the no man's land, it is called. Okay, so that is a place which cannot be occupied by either the countries. So it's called a no man's land. So he's wishing the French army is wishing the English army. They say, Happy Christmas, Tommy, Happy Christmas. When we got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, Same to you, Fritz, same to you. So here Tommy refers to the English army men and Fritz refers to the German army men. Same to you, Fritz, same to you was the reply by the English army men. I thought that would be that. We all did. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his great coat and waving a white flag. Don't shoot, lads, someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet and another. Keep your heads down, I told the men. It's a trick, but it wasn't. So, one by one, all the German warmen, the soldiers, they started walking towards the no man land. They said, waving the white flag. So, someone from them said, Don't shoot, lads, and nobody did. But the Englishman thought that it may be a trick. Keep your heads down. That's what this guy told, the one who's writing a letter to his wife. He says, Don't, it may be a trick, but it wasn't. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. It is Christmas Day, Tommy. We have schnapps. We have sausage. We meet you? Yes. By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land and not a rifle between them. Little Private Morris was first up. Come on, boys. What are we waiting for? And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose. But the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. All along their line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another, grey coats, khaki coats, meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. So do you get that? This guy, the German warriors, they were coming across, walking from their place of land towards the no man land. They were having schnapps. Now, what is schnapps? Schnapps it's an alcoholic drink. Okay, and they were having their sausage. Then they were coming slowly, walking towards no man's land. They said, Come on now, guys, we are coming over there to meet you. Come on, boys. What are you waiting for? Come on, let's celebrate together. They were all coming, walking slowly towards one another. Grey coats, khaki coats, they were all meeting in the middle. And slowly, the English soldiers also were walking towards them without any arms, without their guns. And they suddenly realized that in the middle of the war, they were making peace. You cannot imagine Dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of Fritz officer who approached. So they were filled with a different kind of feeling which they never anticipated, which they never expected. They couldn't imagine this kind of a thing can happen in the middle of a war. Okay? Hans Wolf, he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. I'm Dusseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. So they shook hands with each other and introduced themselves and then wished each other for Christmas. Okay, so he says, Captain Jim Macpherson, I replied, and a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. I know this place, I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage, and we talked. Connie, how we talked. So he's narrating to his wife. He says, Connie, see how much we talked. He spoke perfect English, almost perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set his foot in Dorset, never even been to England. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were hurdles of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of our wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We'd agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There was never a Christmas party like it, Connie. So this guy, who the Captain Jim Macpherson, who was writing a letter, who in his letter is describing this Christmas celebration with the enemy. He's talking about he's narrating what he spoke with the officer from the enemy army. Okay, so the guy was uh, what was his name? Hans Wolf. Yeah. So they got to know about each other's families, what they studied, about their wife and son. They smoked, laughed, talked, drank, ate together. Okay, so this was kind of a party he described that there could never have been such a party. Then someone I don't know who brought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts, and the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz out in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. Jim Macpherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. So, in this paragraph, he is narrating how it all started, what happened later after the celebration was over. One of the soldiers brought a football. All the courts were piled up together to make goal posts. So in the football, on either side, there are goal posts, right? So these courts were used to make the goal posts. And Hans Wolf, the German officer, he and Jim Macpherson, they looked on at each other and they felt that this is how a war should be fought with a football match. So no children are orphaned, no wives become widows. So what he says? I prefer cricket. Uh, I prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. Because, English people were the first two who invented cricket, so they were very good at it. So that's what he says. When we Tommies could be sure of winning, we laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie Fritz won, 2 goals to 1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, the schnapps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. He turned to wave just once, and then became one of the hundreds of grey coated men drifting back towards their trenches. So it looks like the Germans won here. The Fritz won, 2 goals to 1. That was what they said. But he was so generous, the Hans Wolf guy. He is the German soldier. He says it was because our goal was wider. So that is why, that's how we could win. But it was not a fair thing because the opponent's goal was not as wider as ours. So it's okay. So he says, Hans Wolf says, this is what every soldier wants. He wants to go back home to his family, finally. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. It was Still Night, Silent Night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of wild shepherds watched. We exchanged carols for a while and then we fell silent. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. So at the end of it, after the Christmas celebration, the football match happened, and after the match, both the sides felt so good about the entire experience. Then they sang carols. Either side sang carols and gave farewell to each other. So, and this was an experience they will always treasure as long as they live. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and a terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. So he says, by the Christmas time next year, this war would have been just a memory, a terrible memory from what happened today. How much both armies are longing for peace. I hope uh, the rest of the country, they will also realize that the war is a very difficult experience. It's not a good thing for anybody on both sides. So I folded that letter again and slipped it carefully back into the envelope. Okay, the letter ends here and it says, "Your loving Jim." So we shall be together again soon. I'm sure of it. He says, "Anyways, I'm going to come back home soon. Your loving Jim." So the narrator now folds the letter and keeps it back into the envelope. And the entire night he could not sleep after what he read. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a little boy walking his dog where the Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out shelf, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of Mrs. McPherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed. But at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been the candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. Okay, so let's understand what happened after the letter. So the narrator has uh, carefully slipped the letter back into the envelope, and he was thinking about all this in the entire night and couldn't sleep. So next day he decided that he's going to meet this lady and hand over the letter to her. So he went, as per the address, he went to the location, to that address, and he saw that it was a complete burnt location. It was a burnt shell, the roof was gaping, so everything was like terribly burnt. And then he asked the next door person if he knew somebody by the name Mrs. McPherson. So the neighbor said, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her very well. She's a lovely lady, but a bit muddle headed. Muddle headed means a bit forgetful, confused. At that age, she was entitled to be like that, wasn't she? A person who is 101 years old, yes, they are forgetful sometimes, you know. So she had been in the house when it caught fire. So perhaps it could have been the candles. That's what the old man, the neighbor says. The firemen had got her out just in time. So now that the house was entirely burned, she was in a nursing home now, which is in Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. McPherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. So it was Christmas time, everybody was celebrating there. So it was a nursing home where this lady was staying. The matron had a hat too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. Mince pie is a kind of pie, a sweet. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. McPherson is not in with others, she told me. She's rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know, no one visits. So I'm sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with the wickets. There's and potted plants all around and left me with the wicker chairs. Okay, so they are kind of chairs and there are potted plants around. So that's the place where this lady is staying. Okay. Okay, the old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. Hello, I said. She turned and looked up to me vacantly. Happy Christmas, Connie, I went on. I found this. I think it's yours. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. This was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk and about how I found it, but I don't think she was listening. So what happened was, the narrator was found this lady, Connie, who was sitting in a wheelchair, and then as soon as she saw this narrator wishing her happy Christmas, she was pretty excited because nobody ever came to meet her or to wish her for Christmas. There was a sudden glow of happiness. Then the narrator has explained about the desk and how he found it. But this lady was being, she just didn't listen to what this guy was saying. She was just so surprised and happy for having received for having someone on a Christmas day who came to wish her. For a while, she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest, she says. And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down. I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. I read your letters so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you're back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. So she's so happy and excited to have someone wish. She's thinking that this guy who came to visit her is her husband. She asks him to sit beside her and she says, I've been reading this letter every day. Now I want to hear your voice. It's been so long you didn't come. So read this letter for me by yourself. And then I'll make some tea for you. And then I made a lovely Christmas cake with marzipan all around. Now, marzipan is a special kind of icing that is made of all dried fruits that is laid as a icing on the cake. That's called marzipan. So here, I think we complete the lesson here. So So what do you think about this lesson here? So it was a lovely Christmas gift to Connie.